Elyon, the Most High God, reigns over all. The Lord has established His throne in heaven. His kingdom extends over everything. All of your creatures wait for you to give them their food in due season. You give it to them, they gather it up. You open your hand, and they are satisfied with good. He makes nations great and destroys them. He enlarges nations and leads them away. Our God is in heaven. He does whatever He pleases. For the Lord is king and rules over the nations. The Bible is God's self-revelation, and as such, it declares the character of God to us. So much of the Bible explains the sovereignty of God, and rightly understood, the doctrine of the sovereignty of God is entirely comforting, bringing peace in disappointment, in affliction, in turmoil, even in tragedy. But this is often very difficult to grasp when calamity strikes. That's when we're likely to balk at this biblical truth. In the midst of an overwhelming trial, instead of comfort, we may feel confusion. We may feel anger rising up within us. Why did God allow this? But as we learn more about God, what His sovereignty really means, we can regain comfort and contentment within His sovereign will. The Westminster Catechism says of the sovereignty of God, "From all eternity, by the most wise and holy counsel of His own will, God freely and unchangeably ordains whatsoever comes to pass, but is not the author of sin." The definition of a sovereign is one who exercises supreme, permanent authority, especially in government. The most exalted ruler or monarch, superior to all others and free from external control. And this is the perfect definition of God. He is the ultimate authority everywhere, and the totality of all things is subject to Him. God is sovereign over everything that dwells on the earth, along with all angels, including fallen angels, Satan and his demons. God has all power and all knowledge. Therefore, all that occurs will, at the minimum, be allowed by God. We learn from Job chapter 1 that God was the initiator of the ordeal that Job had to endure. But in order for Job to be touched at all, Satan had to ask God to remove the hedge of protection God had placed around Job. God is sovereign over Satan, which goes against the prevalent notion that Satan is in control. Satan is a created being, and therefore he must submit to the Most High God, who utilizes him to accomplish His good purposes. Martin Luther said, "The devil is God's devil, and is unable to superintend beyond the will of God." Satan is called the god of this world, but ultimately the Most High God is altogether in control. Not everything that happens is by the initiative of God, but sometimes God chooses to allow things that He does not directly cause, and that is difficult to understand. Even when terrible things happen, though it may seem so, the world is not spinning out of control. The Most High God is in control over all things. King Nebuchadnezzar was a tyrant. He was an angry king. But Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were all patient and respectful to him. They refused to worship the statue of the king that he had set up, even when faced with their own death. And these young men were confident that the Most High God could deliver them. And yet, in complete trust, they proclaimed, "Our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire, and He will deliver us out of your hand, O King. But even if He does not, let it be known to you, O King, that we are not going to serve your gods or worship the golden image you have set up." After years of a prideful and violent reign, King Nebuchadnezzar was humbled by God. He endured an agonizing and humiliating 7-year trial, in which he descended into madness and became like an animal. In the end, he saw the grace and wisdom of God even through his harrowing ordeal. Nebuchadnezzar said, "Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise, exalt, and honor the King of heaven, for all his works are true and his ways are just, and he is able to humble those who walk in pride." He who possesses all power, wisdom, and authority can do whatever he chooses with his own created universe, but does not always exercise that control. However, to think that when God is not motivating or causing an event, that he is not sovereign would be a mistake. He has total power and dominion and is the sovereign ruler of the universe. Being always holy and always good, he will ultimately work all things for the good of those who love and obey him. A.W. Pink wrote of the sovereignty of God, "He is infinitely elevated above the highest creature. He is the Most High, Lord of heaven and earth, subject to none, influenced by none, absolutely independent. None can thwart him, none can hinder him. So his own word declares, 'My counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure.' He does according to his will in the army of heaven and among the inhabitants of earth, and none can stay his hand." Divine sovereignty means that God is God, that he is on the throne of the universe, directing all things, working all things after the counsel of his own will. God Most High calls mankind to know him, but to know him, we must first recognize he exists, acknowledging him as God over everything. To love, obey, and worship him as Lord of our lives, we must put away all other false gods. The way we know the God Most High is through Jesus Christ, who is God, and came in the flesh to die the death we deserved. Peter reminds us not to be surprised at the fiery trial that has come upon us, as though something strange were happening to us. He says to expect it. J.C. Ryle said, "If we are true Christians, we must not expect everything smooth in our journey to heaven. We must count it no strange thing if we have to endure sickness, losses, bereavements, and disappointments. Free pardon and full forgiveness, grace by the way and glory to the end. All this our Savior has promised to give. But he has never promised that we will have no afflictions. He loves us too well to promise that. By affliction, he teaches us many precious lessons, without which we should never learn. By affliction, he shows us our emptiness and weakness. He draws us to the throne of grace. He purifies our affections. He weans us from the world and makes us long for heaven. In the resurrection morning, we shall all say, 'It is good for me that I was afflicted,' and we shall thank God for every storm. The Most High God abides, lives, and dwells in every true Christian. He has condescended to come and take up residence in you, the temple of the Most High God. Jesus said, 'If anyone loves me, he will keep my word. My Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our home with him. Whoever does not love me does not keep my words. But you do know him, for he abides with you and will be in you, and will give you power to trust and obey."